Hey guys, good morning. If you're new to this channel, hi, it's nice to meet you. My name is Milena. But if you are a returning subscriber, well, welcome back to the show. As a student myself, looking back on my first couple of years, I realized that I spent a lot of money on things that I could have avoided. So that's why I wanted to film this video, to make sure that you guys don't make the same mistakes that I made, because oh, the money I could have saved, the life I could have lived by not making these mistakes. Alright, so the first money mistake that I see a lot of students making, especially in the beginning of their student time, is to not have a budget. So most of these students are leaving their parents' homes for the first time, they're now managing money, and at the beginning aren't as aware of what they need for spending and what they need to survive, that they end up not having a budget in the beginning. Not having a budget usually means that the person ends up overspending, since they don't know what their limit is or how much they have to allocate for things like rent or transportation. They end up spending more money than they are either receiving or they have. And of course, in the long run, that's not sustainable. And so a quick way to avoid this mistake is to make sure to make a budget, or at least to prep a budget in the beginning of your student time, so that you have more of an idea of how much you should be spending and how much you can be spending. The second mistake that I see students making a lot is that they end up buying too much groceries. Since there are a lot of students who are coming to live by themselves for the first time, they end up not really knowing how much food they should have at home, so that they don't have an empty fridge, but at the same time they don't want to feed a small village. This mistake refers more to, natural products or fresh products, such as fruits or vegetables, or things that will obviously perish in the short run. And that usually means that students end up having to throw away like half of the things that they bought because it went bad. And of course, that's not good for the budget. We want to eat everything we buy. And so, in order to avoid this mistake, you should either buy smaller portions or find someone like your roommate or a friend who would like to share. Personally, I buy a lot of vegetables and fruits in bulk, and since I have roommates, it's always great to be able to, split the price and then obviously share the amount of food that there is, just because I know I'm not gonna eat 56 carrots. I might try and I might die, but I'm not going to be eating that much food. And the next point also has to do with food, that students usually go to the most expensive grocery stores, especially in the beginning of their student time. And if you have watched my other video where I talk about what I spend in a week, then you know that of course there is the aspect of convenience from more expensive grocery stores. But if you are looking to keep your budget in that case, I recommend you to do some research so that you can get a good idea of how much things cost at different places, especially for something so important as grocery shopping. You want to be able to be sure that you're buying at the most affordable places if you want to keep a very tight budget. And so the next mistake that I see students making a lot is paying full price for things that they don't necessarily need to be paying full price for. Things, for example, like detergent or soap or laundry pods or, toilet paper are things that you can usually find at places that offer them at discount. These kind of things, buying in bulk is obviously the better decision, usually because you can get a better price for the amount of things that you are buying. If you have been here for a while, then you know that I live in the Netherlands, and here, if you go to stores like Kruidvat, then you can find things like toilet paper or detergent at a discount. And for these kind of supplies that you know you will be needing in the long run, it's just good to get a good price. And if you're missing out on a good discount because you didn't end up looking somewhere, then of course that's just not smart. We don't want that. We want you to save money. The next mistake that I see students making is more of a psychological one, if you may. This actually applies to everyone, not just students, but I feel like a lot of people have fear of missing out. When you have the fear of missing out, then you end up going to bars that you didn't necessarily want to go, or you go to events that you didn't really think were interesting, just because you're afraid that you'll be missing out on something fun. And the best way that you can assure that your fear of missing out does not jeopardize your budget is to learn how to say no. Once you have made a budget, as stated in point 1, then you know how much you can actually spend, which also means that you can be more aware of things that you want to participate in, or things that you'll be there next time. And if you happen to be in a friend group that just enjoys spending money and ends up spending like 50 euros every night, then I'm gonna tell you, that budget that you made, you can just set it on fire. Because it's not gonna work if every night you're questioning if you're gonna have enough money for the other things that you need to survive. Before we go to the next point, please make sure to like this video if you find these tips helpful till now, and hopefully you will watch until the end, because trust me, I want you to save as much money as humanly possible. I believe in you, but even better, I believe in your budget. And if you want to see more videos where I talk about some of my financial advice, then do subscribe to this channel because I plan on making more videos about this. The next mistake that I see a lot of students making is impulse spending. And this isn't just for things like clothes or just objects, but also spending on food and going out to restaurants. And it kind of relates to the last point about the fear of missing out, and just because you feel like, you should be doing something and you end up spending money, and then you realize that your budget couldn't take it and it is now dying. But if you are trying to keep an eye on your budget, then I recommend you to always think of alternatives. With this I mean, if you want to go out and get cocktails with friends or go to a bar, then you might think of an alternative and maybe have everyone bring different ingredients to your place and you make your cocktails yourself. Especially things like alcoholic beverages, they have just a ridiculous markup. It just makes more sense for you to find cheaper and more affordable alternatives that will not harm your budget. The next money mistake is borrowing or lending money. I see a lot of students who go out, and they're partying or they're socializing, and then one person borrows from another person and another person lends some money, and what ends up happening is that some people just don't pay back, or it also means that you are spending more money than you actually have. Before the pandemic, when we used to go out to bars or to restaurants with really big groups, I'd often hear a lot of students say things like, "Hey, can you cover me for this time? I don't have any money left for this month." Just the fact that the person is aware that they don't have any money left to be spending, but are still spending, that says a lot about the lack of budget that is going on. And so I recommend you to lend and borrow with caution, because you don't want to mess up your budget just because you spent money that you thought you had but you didn't really, or because you thought that someone's gonna pay you back and then they didn't. Number 8 is always being the host. I personally love hosting parties, but of course that does mean that you are always the one who has to cover certain things. Unless the people you're hanging out with have an agreement of, we'll do it at my place, but you'll bring this and you'll bring that, or we'll split the costs. What ends up happening is that the person who hosts most of the events or the parties, they're the ones who end up incurring the biggest amount of the cost. If you are someone who loves hosting parties but at the same time doesn't want to be the one who's always incurring all the costs, then I recommend you to get either an app or just use an Excel spreadsheet where you can divide the costs to make sure that how much you're spending is fair. Then the 9th mistake is having subscriptions that you forgot about. You may also have subscriptions to websites or apps that were extremely helpful maybe in the beginning of your studies, but what I often see is that students completely forget that they are subscribed to that and still end up paying throughout their study. And the best way to avoid this is to keep track of all the subscriptions that you have, not only to write it down somewhere, but also to have it in your agenda so that you know exactly how much you're spending, and also to remember to cancel subscriptions in the case that they do come along. And the last mistake that I wanted to talk to you guys about is settling for more expensive plans. And with plans, I mean like phone plans or Wi-Fi plans or even like health insurance plans. It is quite common that those type of companies that are very dependent on subscriptions, that they end up raising a little bit of the price every year and you don't really notice because it is maybe an automated paying system, or you don't really mind. And even though it seems like just a couple of euros or a couple of cents extra every month, it does add up. If you've gotten this far to the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope that these tips have helped you and that you will keep those in mind in order to make sure that you don't go over budget. Alright, I hope to see you guys next time, but until then, take care. Bye guys!